going to talk about how to teach our puppies and dogs polite greetings at the door and how to remain calm when somebody comes to the door. So one thing that's really important to keep in mind is the majority of dogs develop kind of rowdy, obnoxious behavior when someone comes to the door because of the way we react when the doorbell goes off and someone knocks. In other words, you're sitting on the couch or you're sitting at the dinner table, the doorbell rings, there's a knock at the door, and the first thing that happens is that the humans jump up and they run to the door. You run to the door, you open it, there's usually somebody or something there, which is very exciting, and this whole cycle just continues, which means a knock at the door or the doorbell becomes a trigger for many dogs that something really exciting is happening there and that they need to get there. It's compounded when there are humans on the other side of the door who then start getting really excited and happy to see your puppy, start kind of whipping them into the frenzy and petting them when they're jumping and just participating in all the excitement. It just becomes a predictor. So over time, that doorbell or knock just triggers your dog to come unhinged, charge the door, barking, jumping, getting really, really excited, and it just becomes a cycle that can be very, very hard to break. Something else to keep in mind about door greetings is there are dogs who are actually afraid of strangers coming to the door. That noise, that doorbell, that knock becomes a trigger for a fear-based response. And we have dogs who charge the door and will go after people because they're afraid. And that is a very unsafe situation too. So while we don't want our puppies and dogs learning just sort of obnoxious, goofy behavior, we also don't want our fearful dogs practicing dangerous behavior at the door. So starting from a very young age, teaching our pups and dogs, what do we want them to do when they hear that noise? What do we want them to do when that front door opens? It's really important. And the good news is it's really not that hard. My dogs for many, many years have always learned that hearing something at the door is not a cue for them to charge the door. It's actually a cue for them to go do something else. For many years, my dogs were trained that they would hear the doorbell or knock at the door, and the door is this way, they would run that way to our sunroom where their crates were. And they would go into their crates and get wonderful treats, and I could close the doors, and then I could go open the front door, let my guest in, get my package, whatever I needed to do. As my dog family grew, and at one point I had 5 dogs, that became very challenging because I had to get 5 dogs to go to 5 separate crates and close the crates. It could take me minutes to get back to the front door. So I started using our den, which is right off of this wall. It has double glass French doors. It's very easy to access, and I could actually have all the dogs go in there at once. So that's sort of been my default for the past few years. That's the holding area is what I call it. So when somebody comes to our door, or somebody knocks on our door, I immediately will cue the dogs as I'm heading to the front door. They just go into their place and they stay there. So this video is really just to help you develop a training plan that works for your dog. You need to have a couple of things set up. You either have to have a room such as what I do, my den, I have glass doors. We don't want to put dogs into closed in, confined areas where they can't see what's going on. That can be stressful. So if you have a room that has a glass door or side lights or something, that can be helpful. You can use their crate, you can use an X-Pen, and you can also have them go behind a gate. So you look around your house, you look at how it's set up, how you quickly get to your front door, and then you decide, okay, where can I put a barrier so that the dogs can't have access to get to the front door when somebody is there? And that's where you start your training process. So today with Marshall, I'm going to show you how I worked with him to get him to go into our den when he would hear a knock at the door. Eventually I added a doorbell. Today I don't have somebody to ring my doorbell for me, so we're just going to be using knocking. But it's actually pretty straightforward. You have your dog, have him off leash, should not be on a leash. Don't think about grabbing collars and making him do anything. You want to have some treats, and obviously you want to have your pup. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to load up my hand with some treats because I'm going to use quite a few treats when I reward him for going into that room. I'm going to, in a moment, knock on the wall, get Marshall to follow me, open my den door, whip a handful of treats onto the floor, close the door behind me, and just walk through what it would look like if somebody was actually coming to my front door. So, put your place. Good boy. He goes into his room. I'm then going to go to my door and really practice what it would look like. I open my door. That's a trigger for many dogs to hear the door opening. Hey, thanks for coming. I'm then going to close the door. I then go back to where Marshall is confined. Release. Good boy. I let him out. I give him a little reward for coming out with me. And that's just a single repetition. Again, I'm going to knock. 1, good in place. Good job. He goes into his space. I come to the door. I pop it open. Hey, nice to see you. Thanks for coming. Close the door again. Marshall's nice and calm and quiet in here. Release. Good boy. And then I release him to come out. And I'm just going to practice that, 4 or 5 times a day for a week or 2 until I start walking towards here. Hey, Marshall. Good in place. Good boy. And he goes in without any need for me tossing a treat. I use a lot of treats in the beginning, but now that he's older, it's just the cue. And then I'll come back over here, release. Good boy, good job, buddy. And I can let him out. In the beginning, we're gonna be pairing him going into his holding area every single time with a food reward. Not just once or twice, but every single time. Marshall, leave it. Until he consistently will just follow me and go into the den. And then I close the door behind him. I'm gonna practice going to my front door, unlocking it, opening the storm door, pretending to talk to somebody. All of these things are triggers. They get the dog excited. Oh, there's something great happening at the door. So I just practice. Then I try from different parts of my house. I'm upstairs, knock, knock, knock. Now we have to come down the stairs. He has to go in the den. I have to answer the door. I want to set it up from all different situations in my home. But the biggest thing is that he willingly wants to go into the area that I need to hold him. I don't want to drag him, coerce him, force him. If he chose not to go in there, that would just kind of be the end of that training session. But you keep it fun, you keep it short, you keep it simple. I want him to get it right every single time, and I want it to be positive for him. So whether he's going to his crate, whether he's going behind a gate, whether he's going in here, he wants to willingly come and go with me. And then I can confine him. Don't be surprised in the beginning if your pup or dog is excited when you put them in their holding area. They may kind of think, well, I don't really understand what's going on. That's one of the reasons why we're tossing the food. The food is a great way to redirect them. Hey, stop paying attention to me and the door and go over there and get your yummy treat. So that's why I use high value treats. Don't be stingy with the treats. Use a lot of treats if you need to. And we want it to be fun for your dog. It's just a fun little training exercise. Once you've gotten to the point where they're consistently going into their place and they just could care less, then you would be ready to start adding people actually coming to the door, and you'd have to recruit a friend or family member, somebody that's going to just sort of be your decoy person and come to the door. But in my experience, if you start getting too far ahead of yourself, meaning your dog has a couple of good days of going to their holding area, and then you immediately start bringing people into the house and you expect the dog to remain calm, your training is going to probably start to backslide on you. I proof everything until my dog is doing really, really well before I start making it harder for them. Door greetings are one of the most challenging things that most people with pets deal with. It's a common problem. It can also be dangerous. If your dog escapes out the front door, then you're trying to catch a dog who's on the loose. But again, I bring up the dog who's afraid of people coming into your home. This is a critical skill that you must teach your dog. And you have to prepare your family and your friends that, when you come to the house, we always want to make sure that Buster is in his crate before you come in because he can get nervous with strangers. The best thing we can do for fearful dogs is to make situations predictable for them, and that makes them feel safer. It also makes you feel better, and then you're not so stressed. So work on this simple training exercise. Figure out where you want your dogs to go when they hear somebody at the door. Practice a lot, have fun with it. Once they're consistently going to their holding area without the need for you to use a food reward, in other words, you can just cue them and they'll go in and you can close your door, close their gate, you can pretend to go open the door and come back and get them. Then we're ready to start adding people. The next video that I tape over the next couple weeks, will be actually showing how do we welcome visitors into our home with a new puppy, because in a couple weeks I'm going to have a new puppy. So there'll be a lot of different training things that we'll be working on, but this one is critical. And I would advise you, if you know holidays are coming up and you're gonna have people coming and going probably, don't expect your dog to learn this in 2 weeks. It's almost the second week of December and it's just too close to the holidays for them to perfect this skill. So work on this first step, let them have a lot of fun, and in a couple weeks we'll have part 2.